I just remembered. You're going to love this. It's something you don't know. I was given a job when I was at Westland Helicopters.
Okay.
They had a problem that IT didn't understand the factory at all, and the factory didn't understand IT. And this was back in the 80s when computers were quite new. So the factory wanted or kind of needed help from IT, but just didn't know how to explain what they wanted. And the IT guys couldn't speak to the factory people. And they gave me the job of being the go-between, the link man between the two.
Yeah.
And this is complete anathema to fractal thinking, where you'd have the same person doing the IT and the production. But because the silos were so separate, they gave me the job of... So the idea was I would talk to the factory and understand them and work out what they wanted. And I would talk to IT and find out what they were capable of doing. And then I would say to the factory, I think we need a system for this. And I would say to IT, can you do this? And I would be like the go-between, a bit like the go-between between the salesperson and the production person, really. Because that, in a way, internal sales, because the factory was the customer.
Yeah.
And because otherwise you get IT making something that's not suitable for the factory. It's too complicated, or they don't know how it works. And the factory is sitting there thinking, well, if it could only be this, it would be great. And nobody's told IT. And if they were told, they'd probably go, well, yeah, we could make that if we knew that's what you wanted. So I was a go-between.
And were you an expert in IT or an expert in production?
I knew more about production, but I wasn't really an expert in either. But I had a sort of bit of an understanding of both.
So they chose you...
Yeah.
Because you couldn't do production very well, and you knew nothing about IT.
Yes.
That you'd be the ideal person. No favouritism.
Well, I knew a bit about both, and actually there was nobody else who understood even a bit of both. Everybody was like totally one or totally the other, and I was the one person who could put a foot in both sides, but I wasn't great at either. And they gave me that job, and it was terrible. I hated it. It was a total disaster because I didn't understand enough about the IT, and the factory didn't really want to know, and I ended up doing very little because there was very little demand for me, and I just felt horrible about the job, because you want a job where you're wanted, and everybody's saying, "Can you help us with this?" And they were like, "Can you just go away because we're busy?
Yeah,
we don't want it. We don't want this."
Yeah,
and it was a horrible job, and I did it for about 6 months, and it had some very clever job title that made it sound important, and things like I can't remember, like systems coordinator or something, or
manager. You see,
manager of something.
A parking space slightly closer to the door.
Yes, exactly. But if only IT and production had understood each other, or if somebody had actually been doing both, then of course that whole problem would have just gone away. Yeah. So that was a whole job created just to try to improve the communication between the two, but it didn't work. So I think it was a kind of an interesting idea, and it might have worked, but it didn't. So that might be my fault.